So, I figured I'd let you guys know what my thoughts were from the flight the other day. Talking with my cousin Brian, we always just kind of go over everything after each of our flights since we're new and trying to learn something. Maybe somebody else can learn something, or maybe somebody else can add some tidbits for us to learn from, because obviously we're just some newbies getting going. But first off, I was going to let you guys know I had one of the most horrible dreams of my whole entire life last night. I've been to war and all this kind of stuff, and I've had some nightmares, but last night takes the cake, dude. I let some guy in my dream fly my airplane that I know who has a pilot's license. And he, in my dream, he comes over top of me and he's hot rodding my airplane, and he comes down into a dive and he pulls up super hard, and I see part of his wing fly off, and I'm like, no, my airplane's falling apart, And he goes around just still ripping, and off comes fabric off the wings. I'm like, oh no, I see him, he's spiraling down, I see the top of the treetops waving and he's crashing into him. Like, oh, my plane, not really thinking of him much. Get over there and he ends up climbing out and he's acting like it's not that big of a deal, just wrecked the plane, crashed it, no big deal. And he's got some weird fireman suit on, he's kind of covered in soot, but for some reason the plane ain't burning. And I'm like, did you at least get the props shut off, or did you wipe out my engine too, And he's, oh yeah, it's no big deal, I got it shut off, my plane's just crumpled up on the ground. And I'm like, did you destroy the Hemi? In my dream, I had this big old Hemi engine on there. I guess that probably come from yesterday with feeling like I didn't have enough power on the downdrafts, So this dream went all night long, just over and over again, like waking up in cold sweats. I'm like, bring back the war dreams, man. I can't handle dreams of my Sky Tractor getting smashed. Probably fair enough to say I'm starting to get a little bit of a mental issue over my airplane. Anywho, back to the flight yesterday and what I was thinking, what we were thinking about it. Because it's kind of funny, you look at the, you look at the footage, and if you haven't flown, I guess, really, and been at the controls and been in that situation as a new guy, you'd really be thinking, well, there's nothing going on, Because, especially even for a more experienced pilot, there probably really wasn't, I would love to hear from what we were thinking and explaining what happened from a more experienced pilot, maybe their ideas of how dangerous a situation like this could have been. So when I initially took off, and there's a spot in the video where I said, right when I come off the ground, I rotated, and I said, oh, that was weird. Looking back, what it seemed to be, because the windsock was hanging limp, but it was changing direction still. It was variable. So, there was something swirling. And then I hadn't realized the down pushes, the downdrafts that were coming in. And looking back on it, what it felt like it was just pressure on the top that pushed me back down. After my wheels came off the ground, pushed me back down, and I felt my right wheel touch the ground, and I just pulled back a little on the yoke, increased my angle of attack, and just lifted off, and just kept going. But that was my first indication for me that something was weird. Because I've been in some bumpy, I've actually been up in my plane in some really extremely bumpy stuff. My instructor said it was the worst stuff he's ever flown in Wyoming. So I've been in the real rough stuff in my plane, but not alone. So, and then as I got up in the air, of course, I felt the unsettled air, and that made me kind of going, I don't know if this is what I want for a Sunday morning flight kind of a deal, because I didn't really go out there to work so much. I went out there to just have a nice Sunday morning flight before church, All of a sudden I'm going, well, it's kind of hard to have a nice Sunday morning flight before church with it all bumpy. But even that's not really what completely, really got me to not want to fly, or the completely unsettling feeling. The unsettling feeling was these downdrafts that were getting me that seemed to be a little bit more than just sinkholes. I dealt with plenty of those. I'm only at whatever, just shy of 40 hours now, but I've dealt with plenty of those. But these were like heavy pushes, you know, and really hard to tell when they were coming on. There wasn't like an abrupt, you know, hit of them. They just all of a sudden were there, and if you didn't look over at your gauges, you wouldn't realize that you were losing, you know, or that you know, had stopped climbing. And that's what had happened in the one portion. I think it's like a little after 19 minutes into the video or something. I was climbing out, and normally when I'm climbing out, my plane climbs out at 95 miles an hour, 95 to 100 miles an hour at 800 feet a minute, 800 to even 1,000 feet a minute. Pretty consistent. That's what it does. And what happened there is I was looking, and all of a sudden I was like, had a little bit of a goofy feeling, and I look over, I glanced over, and what I seen was my climb had went to a flat line. I was at zero on the climb. I was flatlined. And I was like, uh-oh. And, you know, I checked, I was full throttle, you know, and so I ended up coming back on my yoke a little bit, and I increased my angle of attack, and I went back to 85 mile an hour. And at 85 mile an hour, I never climb that slow. Like I just don't do super steep climbs yet, you know. I just don't. I keep my airspeed up and climb out. And so I was back to 85 miles an hour, and I was at 100 or maybe 200 feet per minute climb. And that's when I said something like, "Get on up there, plane." And that was really unsettling to me. And in the video, you really can't see any of that. But I'd like to hear what some experienced pilot has to say, if somebody actually cares to chime in, or a newbie on if you've experienced that. Anybody, really, whatever your thoughts are. I mean, I don't care if you're a pilot or not. But maybe somebody else can learn something. Maybe somebody else has something we can learn. That's kind of, I guess, what this is all about. Share the journey and share the experience, and hopefully learn something along the way from each other that can help us not end up in a situation like my dream with our plane with the big Hemi going up in smoke, with somebody who wasn't on our insurance flying it into the ground thinking it's funny. Definitely ain't letting somebody that's not on my insurance into my airplane. That is not happening. I cannot deal with those kind of feelings that I had going on in that dream. I think about the only other dreams I've had that have been worse than the feeling is some dream about like one of my kids dying or something. I know that sounds really messed up to say, but it is what it is.